Before a single dad mechanic stepped into a corporate tower, he had no idea he was about to change 3 lives forever. A frightened little girl, a lonely CEO, and one broken generator sparked a moment that rewrote their futures. Like the video, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Let's get started. In downtown Chicago, 32-year-old single dad Aaron Blake had learned to live between 2 worlds: the noisy, dust-coated service floors where he spent most of his days fixing broken machines, and the polished, glass-walled offices above him where people in expensive suits made decisions he would never be part of. He didn't envy them. He just wanted stability for his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. That night, as winter winds hammered the skyscraper, Aaron was preparing to clock out when the building lights flickered. He paused. A second later, the top-floor power cut entirely, plunging the executive level into darkness. His radio buzzed with frantic static, and security scrambled for answers. Aaron didn't wait for instructions. He grabbed his toolbox and sprinted for the elevator. As he climbed the silent emergency stairwell, the air grew colder. The top floor housed the executive suites, including the private office of the company's CEO, a woman with a reputation for terrifying efficiency and impossible standards. Aaron didn't know her personally. He'd only seen her once from a distance, walking through the lobby surrounded by assistants. Everyone called her Miss Kensington, spoken with both awe and fear, the woman who turned a failing Chicago firm into a national powerhouse. But right now, none of that mattered. A generator had failed, and someone up there needed help. When he burst through the door of the executive corridor, moonlight spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the expensive carpet. The silence was unsettling, until a small whimper broke it. Aaron froze when he saw a little girl curled up on a leather couch outside the CEO's private office. She couldn't have been more than 7, the same age as Lily. Her tiny hands gripped a worn teddy bear, her face pale in the bluish glow of emergency lights. "Hey, are you okay?" Aaron asked softly, lowering himself to her level. She sniffled and nodded timidly, though fear still shone in her eyes. "Mum's in a meeting. The power went out. I don't like the dark," she whispered, her voice shaking in a way that cut straight through him. Aaron gave her a reassuring smile, the same one he used when Lily had nightmares. "You're safe. I'm here to fix it," he said gently. He opened the maintenance panel near the office door, his flashlight cutting through the dark. The smell of burnt wiring confirmed what he already suspected. The emergency generator had overloaded. While he set his tools down, the girl shuffled closer, still clutching her teddy bear. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma," she whispered. "Emma Kensington." Aaron paused, blinking. Kensington, the CEO's daughter. Suddenly the suits, the security, the way the office was guarded like a fortress. It all made sense. And now the most powerful woman in the building had her child alone in the dark, depending on him to keep her safe. "Well, Emma," he said warmly, "I'm Aaron, and I promise we'll have the lights back soon." As he began repairing the generator, Emma watched him with wide, fascinated eyes. Tools clicked softly in the quiet room, metal parts clinking like whispered rhythm. Aaron's hands moved with practiced precision. Years of repairing everything from elevators to old boilers had taught him to work fast under pressure. He could feel Emma trembling beside him each time the building rattled from wind. "Are you scared of storms?" he asked, without looking away from the wires. "No," she whispered. "I'm scared of when Mom isn't here." Aaron's chest tightened. He knew that feeling too well. The ache of missing someone who never seemed to have time. Lily felt it more than she ever admitted. A sudden crack of thunder shook the windows, and Emma jumped, grabbing his arm instinctively. Aaron didn't flinch. He shifted closer, creating a small shield between her and the gloomy hallway. "It's okay," he murmured. "Storms sound loud up here because we're so high up, but they can't hurt you." Emma's tiny hand remained wrapped around his sleeve, trusting him completely. The innocence in her touch, so small, so desperate for comfort, struck Aaron harder than he expected. He tightened a screw in place, reconnecting power lines with careful movements. "Do you fix everything?" Emma asked. "Not everything," he said quietly, thinking of the pieces of his own life he still struggled to hold together. "But I try." Just then, footsteps echoed from the conference room. The CEO's meeting had ended. Aaron glanced up as the door opened, and silhouettes stepped into the darkened hallway, their voices sharp with irritation. Out walked a woman who immediately commanded the room even without the lights. Tall, poised, dressed in a tailored navy suit that looked more expensive than his monthly rent. Her hair was pulled into a sleek twist, and her eyes, intense, intelligent, and sharp as glass, landed instantly on Emma clinging to Aaron. For a moment, the mask of power she wore cracked, revealing a mother's fear. "Emma!" she breathed, rushing forward. The girl ran into her arms. "Mom!" she whispered. "I was scared." The CEO exhaled shakily, holding her daughter close. She looked at Aaron, and gratitude flickered across her controlled expression. "You're the mechanic?" she asked. "Building technician," he corrected gently. She nodded, her voice softer. "Thank you for staying with her." Before Aaron could respond, the emergency lights flickered as the generator hummed back to life behind him. The entire executive floor lit up. Emma clapped. The CEO's eyebrows lifted in impressed surprise. "You fixed it already?" "Just needed." "New wiring?" Aaron replied, brushing dust off his hands. "It's stable now." She studied him, his steady voice, his calm around her daughter, his competence. Something unspoken passed in her eyes. Security rushed forward, speaking into radios, apologizing profusely. But the CEO didn't listen to them. Her attention remained on Aaron and her daughter. Emma tugged her sleeve. "Mom, he helped me. He stayed." The CEO exhaled, visibly moved. "Yes, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing her forehead, then turned to Aaron again. "I'm Alexandra Kensington." She extended her hand. Aaron shook it. Her grip was firm, confident, but warm. "I owe you more than just a thank you," she said. Aaron smiled faintly. "No need. I was just doing my job." But Alexandra shook her head, something softening in her usually rigid posture. "Maybe, but you were here when she needed someone. That matters." As Aaron packed his tools, he felt Emma's small hand touch his arm again. "Will you come back?" she asked innocently. Alexandra opened her mouth to gently scold her, but Aaron beat her to it with a kind smile. "I'm always around the building. If anything breaks again, I'm your guy." Emma grinned. Alexandra looked away briefly, as if hiding a smile. When Aaron walked toward the elevator, he couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual had just happened. A connection, subtle yet undeniable, woven by darkness, fear, and a flickering generator. And though he didn't know it yet, this late-night moment was the spark that would pull three very different lives together, in ways none of them could have predicted. Vivian stood in the doorway longer than she realized, her hand still gripping the knob, as if letting go would release every emotion she had been holding back for years. The soft hum of the generator returned through the building, but what struck her wasn't the restored power. It was the sight of her daughter completely at ease with a stranger. Aaron's calm voice and patient smile made the office hallway feel warmer than it had in ages. For a woman known for being unshakable in the boardroom, she suddenly felt off balance. Something about this man's kindness unsettled her in a way she didn't expect. As Aaron rose to his feet, brushing dust from his hands, Vivian watched him closely. He didn't stand like a man seeking approval. He stood like someone who had already accepted that life rarely rewarded good deeds. His clothes were worn, his boots scuffed, yet he carried himself with quiet confidence. She found herself wondering more about who he was before realizing she was staring. "Sorry, I wasn't expecting anyone here," she said. adjusting her blazer, though it didn't need adjustment. He simply nodded, unfazed by her polished CEO energy. Her daughter Lily tugged on Aaron's sleeve, drawing his attention back down. "Mommy, he fixed the noisy thing, and he wasn't scared when the lights went boom." Vivian's lips pressed together as guilt crept in. She worked so much that she rarely noticed how many booms her daughter faced alone in the office. If not for employees watching her between meetings, Lily usually wandered around quietly, trying not to disturb anyone. Aaron crouched again and high-fived her gently, making Lily giggle in a way Vivian hadn't heard in months. It tightened something deep in her chest. "Thank you," Vivian repeated slower this time. "We have a full contracted engineering team. You really didn't have to do that." Aaron wiped his hands with a cloth, shaking his head. "I wasn't thinking about the team. Kids panic when lights go out. I couldn't walk away." Vivian wasn't used to hearing answers that simple. People usually justified actions, presented agendas, or hinted at favors. But Aaron's motives were purely human. No angle, no hidden intention. It made her feel strangely exposed, like someone had seen a version of her she didn't present publicly. She stepped inside her office and gestured for them to follow. The room's modern design, glass walls and chrome fixtures contrasted sharply with Aaron's dusty clothes, but he didn't look uncomfortable. In fact, he seemed more relaxed here than half the executives who visited her daily. Lily immediately jumped onto the couch with familiarity, hugging her stuffed bunny. Vivian sat at her desk, trying to find her professional tone again. "You work in building maintenance?" she asked. Aaron shook his head. "No, ma'am. I'm just a mechanic. HVAC guy quit last week, so they asked me to check the generator until they hire someone." Vivian blinked. "So you're not required to respond to outages?" Aaron smiled. "Not in my job description, but I don't like seeing a kid scared." Again, his answer landed deeper than she expected. She folded her hands, studying him. Something about him pushed through the walls she had carefully built over years of leadership, motherhood, and loneliness. "Well, I appreciate it more than you know," she said softly. He nodded, clearly satisfied with nothing more than simple gratitude. It was so foreign to her that she almost didn't know how to continue the conversation without sounding overly formal. Lily climbed off the couch and wrapped her small hand around Aaron's thumb. "Mommy, he teaches me how the machines work. Can he show me more?" Vivian almost laughed at the sight. Her daughter, usually so shy, had attached herself to a stranger like she'd known him for years. Aaron crouched again, meeting Lily at eye level. "Maybe another day, little one. Right now your mom needs to finish work." Lily's smile faded, replaced by the saddest pout Vivian had ever seen. She looked at her daughter apologetically, realizing how much the little girl craved connection. When Aaron stood up to leave, Vivian followed him into the hallway. A sense of gratitude pulled at her, but so did a strange reluctance to watch him walk away. "Aaron," she called gently. He stopped and turned, amid his expression curious but respectful. "If you ever need anything, or if anyone gives you trouble for helping out, please let me know," she said. "I mean it." Aaron tilted his head slightly, as if confused by her worry. "People don't get in trouble for doing the right thing," he said. "At least they shouldn't." His words lingered long after he left. Vivienne returned to her office, but the atmosphere felt different, warmer, lighter, less suffocating. She looked at Lily, who sat swinging her legs on the couch, humming the tune Aaron had taught her while waiting out the outage. "You like him?" Vivienne asked casually. Lily nodded eagerly. "He's nice. He listens. He showed me the shiny wires and said I was brave." Brave. It was a word rarely used in their home. Vivian swallowed hard, realizing how much her daughter needed someone who wasn't always rushing, always working, always exhausted, someone who gave patience without being asked. Hours later, long after employees had gone home, the building felt unusually quiet. Vivienne sat alone, reviewing reports, but her mind kept drifting back to the mechanic with calm eyes and gentle hands. She couldn't understand why he stayed with her daughter instead of retreating to finish his shift. Most people avoided getting involved, especially in corporate buildings, yet he stepped forward without hesitation. She found herself wondering about his life, his family, his struggles. Something about him suggested he carried weight on his shoulders, but there was no bitterness, only resilience, as if kindness was his default language. When she finally packed up to leave, she found Lily asleep on the couch, with her bunny tucked under her chin. Vivienne lifted her daughter gently, smoothing her hair. The generator's low hum filled the hallway once more, and for the first time, the sound didn't feel mechanical. It felt like reassurance. She whispered to herself, "He did more than fix a generator." She wasn't ready to admit it, but she felt it anyway. He had unknowingly touched the life of a child and a woman who had forgotten that genuine people still existed in the world. The next morning, Vivienne couldn't shake the urge to check the maintenance logs. She scanned the digital system until she found his full name, Aaron Cole. Under his profile, there were notes of excellent work, no complaints, and one comment from a supervisor months ago. Takes initiative, doesn't ask for credit. Vivienne stared at the screen longer than necessary, absorbing the quiet truth about him. It explained everything she witnessed the night before. A man with no agenda, no arrogance, no expectation, just a sense of duty that went beyond job descriptions. It made her respect him even more. Later that afternoon, she spotted him in the loading bay while walking with Lily. He was repairing a ventilation unit, focused and steady, unaware that anyone was watching. Lily instantly brightened, pulling free from her mother's hand. "Mr. Aaron!" she squealed, running toward him. He turned, surprised but smiling warmly. "Hey, sunshine," he greeted her. Vivienne approached slowly, noticing the way he softened in her daughter's presence. It wasn't forced. It wasn't awkward. It was natural in a way that took her breath for reasons she couldn't yet name. For a moment, the three of them stood there, the mechanic, the CEO, and the little girl who somehow connected them without trying. Aaron removed his gloves and tucked them into his belt. "Didn't scare you this time?" he joked gently. Lily shook her head proudly. "Because you said brave girls don't run." Vivienne watched their interaction, realizing why this man's presence felt different. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't intimidated by her title. He didn't treat her like a CEO or a wealthy woman. He treated her like a human being, something she rarely experienced anymore. As they talked, something unspoken passed between Vivienne and Aaron. Something fragile, something unexpected, something that felt like the start of a shift neither of them was prepared for. The world around them continued as usual, machines humming, employees passing by, doors closing. But inside that small loading bay, a quiet connection formed. Not romantic yet, not dramatic, not rushed, just real. And for the first time in a very long while, Vivienne didn't feel alone in her own building. She didn't know what part 3 of their story would bring, but she knew one thing clearly. She wanted to find out. As the elevator doors slid open with a muted chime, Vivienne guided Aaron forward, her daughter's tiny hand still wrapped around his sleeve. The hallway lights glowed softly now, fully restored thanks to him, casting warm reflections on the polished floor. Vivienne felt an unexplainable flutter in her chest, something she had long forgotten existed. Before she could thank him again, her daughter gently tugged at Aaron's arm, leaned close and whispered, "She's my mum. Please marry her." The innocence in her tone made Aaron freeze mid-step, while Vivienne's breath caught in a mixture of surprise, embarrassment, and tenderness. For a moment, the silence felt almost sacred. Vivienne covered her face, shaking her head with a shy laugh that sounded nothing like the disciplined CEO she was known to be. Aaron's cheeks flushed red, but his eyes softened as he knelt to meet the little girl at eye level. "That's a big idea," he said gently. "Maybe we can start with dinner first." His words carried warmth without pressure. kindness without presumption. When Vivian lifted her gaze to his, something unspoken passed between them, something hopeful, delicate and new, like the first spark before a steady flame. As the elevator began descending, the soft hum filled the space around them. Vivian watched Aaron quietly, noticing details she hadn't before: the light stubble along his jaw, the calloused hands that spoke of long hours and hard work, and the gentle steadiness in his posture. Her daughter leaned against his arm as if she had known him for years, not minutes. Somehow, the small enclosed space felt safer than any executive boardroom she had ever sat in. When they reached the lobby, Aaron offered a modest smile, almost apologetic, as if unsure whether this rare moment belonged to him. Outside, the evening air carried a cool Chicago breeze, rolling gently between the towering buildings that framed the skyline. Streetlights blinked awake as dusk deepened, scattering gold against the pavement. Aaron walked them toward their car, not wanting the moment to end, but unsure how to hold onto it without crossing lines. Vivian noticed the hesitance and surprised herself by breaking the silence first. "About that dinner," she began softly. Aaron turned, his expression attentive. "I'd like that," she finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Her daughter clapped quietly, delighted, and for the first time in years, Vivian didn't hide her smile. When Aaron finally waved goodbye and climbed into his truck, he remained seated for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. The dashboard lights illuminated his thoughtful expression. He had come here expecting to fix a generator, not to walk out feeling like he had stepped into a chapter of a life he hadn't known he was missing. As he drove through the evening traffic, he replayed the sound of their laughter in the hallway, the child's whisper, Vivian's shy smile. Something felt different, lighter, yet deeper, as if the city itself had shifted slightly to make room for something new. Back in her office, after putting her daughter in the car with the nanny, Vivian sat alone for a moment, staring at the now bright lights overhead. A simple generator failure had shaken her day, but it was the arrival of a humble mechanic that shook her heart. She traced her fingers over the edge of her desk, feeling the cool glass surface beneath her fingertips. For years she had built walls, necessary ones, she thought, to keep herself focused and unbroken. But tonight, all it took was a man wiping grease from his hands and comforting her daughter to crack them open. The elevator memory replayed in her mind, her daughter leaning into Aaron with unreserved trust, something she rarely showed to strangers. Children, she knew, had instincts adults often ignored. And then there was Aaron's reaction, not prideful, not awkward, just genuine. He didn't flirt, didn't boast, didn't try to use the moment for anything. He simply existed with honesty, something rare in her corporate world. Vivian leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly, wondering if fate had been waiting for a power outage just to illuminate something she had been too busy to see in the daylight. That night at home, after preparing her daughter for bed, Vivian sat beside her, brushing a gentle hand through her hair. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "why did you say that to Aaron?" Her daughter blinked sleepily and answered with the clarity only children possessed. "Because he helped me when you were busy, and he made the dark not scary." Vivian's heart tightened warmly. Her daughter snuggled closer and added, "He looked at me like Daddy used to." Tears pricked Vivian's eyes, unexpected, silent, touching something deep. She kissed her daughter's forehead, lingered a moment, then whispered, "Good night, my brave girl." Meanwhile, miles away, Aaron sat on the porch steps of his modest apartment building, staring at the quiet street. The night was calm, broken only by distant traffic and the soft chirp of crickets. He rarely let himself dream of anything beyond practical realities: work, bills, repairs, surviving week to week. But tonight, a single moment had cracked open a window he didn't know still existed inside him. Vivian's smile, her daughter's small hand holding his sleeve, These memories felt like small lanterns glowing in corners of his life that had long been darkened by hardship and routine. The following day, Vivian found herself distracted at work. During meetings, she caught herself thinking about Aaron's modest shrug, the way he had said, "Your daughter was scared. That's all that mattered." No one in her corporate orbit ever acted without an angle, but he had. When lunch break came, she typed a message, deleted it, retyped, deleted again. Finally, she sent a simple one. "Dinner tomorrow? We'd both like that." She hesitated a moment before adding, "Thank you again for everything yesterday." She almost feared the simplicity of her own words, but sometimes simplicity carried the most sincerity. Aaron saw the text while tightening a bolt on a client's old Honda. His breath stalled for a moment. Dinner. She wanted dinner. Not as a thank you gesture, not as a corporate courtesy, but as something shared. He wiped his hands on a clean rag, unsure whether his smile was too obvious. For years, he'd been overlooked, underestimated, but with Vivian he hadn't felt small, not even once. He typed back, "I'd like that too," and after a moment added, "Tell your daughter I'll bring the magic not scary toolkit." He chuckled softly, surprised by his own playfulness. The next evening, Vivian chose a simple yet elegant outfit. Nothing that screamed CEO, nothing that weighed her with expectations. Her daughter insisted on picking a bow that looked friendly, and Vivian didn't argue. When the doorbell rang, the little girl rushed ahead, opening it with a burst of excitement. Aaron stood there, freshly showered, wearing a clean button-down shirt and holding a small toolkit, not for repairs, but because he knew it would make her daughter smile. Vivian's heart warmed instantly. She hadn't realized until now how beautiful vulnerability could feel when shared rather than hidden. Dinner unfolded naturally, without forced conversation. They talked about simple things, childhood memories, favorite foods, small struggles, big dreams. Aaron listened intently, never interrupting, never trying to impress. Vivian noticed he treated her daughter with the same respect he showed adults, engaging her in every conversation. When dessert arrived, her daughter leaned close and whispered loudly enough for both to hear, "Mommy smiles more when you're here." Vivian felt her cheeks flush, but Aaron simply reached across the table, giving her a look that said he felt the same. And for the first time in years, she didn't hold back. Weeks passed, and what began as a simple dinner grew into a gentle rhythm of shared evenings, small joys, and newfound understanding. Vivian learned that Aaron had been raised by a single father who worked night shifts, teaching him humility, honesty, and the value of showing up for people. Aaron learned that Vivian's success came with loneliness she rarely admitted, but together they found a balance, his grounded warmth and her driven spirit blending into something unexpectedly healing. Her daughter adored him openly, and Vivian found herself doing the same, only more quietly, more cautiously, but more deeply each day. One late evening, as they stood on Vivian's balcony overlooking the glowing Chicago skyline, Aaron wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. The wind was cool, but her heart felt warm. Her daughter slept peacefully inside, exhausted from laughter and stories Aaron had told. Vivian turned to him and whispered, "You've brought light back into this home." Aaron brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. "You already had the light," he replied softly. "I just fixed the wiring." She laughed through rising tears, leaning into him, realizing that vulnerability no longer frightened her. It freed her. The city hummed below them, but in that small space above the world, everything felt quiet and complete. Vivienne rested her head against Aaron's chest, hearing the steady rhythm of someone who had walked into her life by accident, but stayed by choice. Her daughter's whisper echoed in her memory, "Please marry her." And for the first time, Vivian let herself imagine a life rebuilt, healed, brighter than before. Aaron held her close, the night wrapping around them like a promise. And as the lights of Chicago shimmered below, their hearts aligned, steady, warm, and finally fully powered back on.